Welcome everyone to a new edition of the Future of RevOps live show. And today we have the pleasure, we have the honor to have Kellen Casebeer with us. What's up, Kellen? How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Thank you for having me. How are you today, dude?
So good, very good. I was just telling Kellen that I came back to Buenos Aires today, so it's my first day back in town. Getting used to it after like 6 months traveling. And Kellen has some amazing news also. the, he, his, his girl just was born a few days ago, so exciting life news, I would say.
Yeah, amen. Not too much sleep though.
I bet, I bet.
Yes, daddy once again. Pierre knows.
So let's dive into the structure of this event. We're gonna invest some minutes letting Kellen introduce himself and tell us more about his business and what type of companies he's helping with his company. Then we're gonna dive into the interview. I'm gonna make some questions around the message market fit, which is the topic that brings us together. At the end, we're gonna spend some minutes for Q&A. So we're gonna go until, let's say, 11:45 Eastern time. So yeah, the mic is all yours. Kellen, feel free to begin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, man. What's up, everybody? My name's Kellen Casebeer. I'm founder of a business called the Deal Lab, and we help companies find and then sort of like actualize message market fit, as we call it, right? And so this idea message market fit is a concept I came up with based off of this guy, Brian Balfour, who was like a product marketer for HubSpot, right? And he has this four quadrants of market fit framework where it's like product market fit and, market channel fit, some of these other things I don't even honestly remember. They're not message market fit, but like the spirit of this idea of like how things connect was what I was following when I came up with message market fit re-messaging, right? And so I was working as a fractional VP of sales. I was building 0 to 1 outbound sales teams. And we would sell this like 6 month project. It was 120 grand for the project that we were doing. Plus clients would hire a sales rep and they would set up they would buy their own tech stack. Right. And so it's kind of like the way I'd think of it is we were doing 10 things at once to 0 to 1 these outbound programs. And what that would look like from a timeline perspective is like month one, set up the tech stack, like start to map out their markets and basically like onboarding type stuff. Month two, it'd kind of launch hiring, right? We'd be doing interviews and like furthering sort of our positioning preparation work. Month three, we'd get this person in the seat, we'd start to onboard them, and then we would begin basically outreach. And so we'd be like halfway through this project, 60 grand in the hole before we even start doing outreach. And what almost, so maybe half the time that would just go fine, right? Like it would just work at face value and it was amazing. The model was great. And then half the time pipeline would be a challenge, right? And when pipeline was a challenge, the whole project looked disastrous. It was really bad because like everything is downstream of those meetings. And so if there's no meetings, like you're not really getting to train on how to run the calls or any of the other things, right? And so clients would be frustrated. We always had a million ideas of things that we could be trying to do, but our ability to take a good idea and then execute it to see was it working well or not wasn't where it needed to be because we had this choke point of these junior reps. So I started my business with the idea of like segment markets for people, be extremely fractional, be a done for you service where someone can pay us, we segment their market, we set up sending infrastructure, and then we run outbound for them. The model looks like your average, cold email shop, so to speak, but the intention behind it and the thinking behind it is sort of like testing and validating positioning with the idea that once you have messaging with a strong throughput, I can go do that 6 month project as an example. I de-risk it. I know I can go put reps in the situation and we'll be able to hit pipeline goals. And so that experience in the fractional sales thing led to starting this business. Day one of this business, we only did that testing thing for like a year and a half. we did it well enough that we started having to like retain clients into the next things, right? And so we've added stuff like calling and LinkedIn outreach. We got like very basic RevOps chop type stuff so we can help people do some like 1.0 CRM type stuff. And so we basically work as like a growth partner, very much so focused on like strategy, messaging, positioning, but pretty strong across the board in terms of just like outbound and strategy stuff.
Nice. Thank you for the intro. I'm curious about what is your ICP with the Deal Lab? What type of companies do you guys help? What size? What industry?
Yeah. So we have like it's funny because like this is the answer, every VP of sales tells their team like you're not supposed to say this. But the way I look at
Mhm.
our business, right, is like we are problem solvers. We're really good at this. And so it's like honestly, we work with people that want to work with us. The reason I say it that way is we have early stage clients that have like product hypotheses, right? And they're like, we have this idea. We want to go test and validate this before like fully building it out. And they'll hire us to run the messaging feedback loops. And then they build off that signal. Right. And so like that person, they might not be getting like financial, they're not getting like 3-to-1 CAC payback type stuff, but they're investing in the R&D of their business and we can become a really useful partner there. Right. Once someone has that sort of initial hypothesis, they have some sort of semblance of throughput, then we start getting into the like I call it quota era, like, hey, I need 8 of these a month or you're gonna be gone type thing. Um, and so, I mean, for a business to kind of like graduate into that, usually their ACV needs to be in some sort of realm. We work with B2B companies almost exclusively. We've done a couple things that weren't quite B2B. Um, we also worked with publicly traded companies, like really big companies, so we've just there's a lot of different little like intervention points that a business like ours that's really really good at granularity of segmentation and like creativity of positioning can kind of come in, look at a situation and improve it. You could have 20 reps and I could come in and I'm sure I can help your reps improve their throughput of their messaging, or you could have no reps and we could maybe help you go another couple quarters until you hire, stuff like that. And so it's a little bit less like I don't care what size they are, I don't care who they sell
Mhm.
to. We don't only specialize in IT or SaaS. It's like because really it's like human psychology, right? The way I put it is like you built your company, you have a thing, there's a market, right, that doesn't know about you, and we build and test and validate the bridges between those things, and our skill set is that we're foreign to it a little bit, right? Like founders are kind of so in the weeds of their own thing, they have beautiful perspective, but a lot of biases, right? And
Yeah.
so sometimes it's really helpful to have this guy who's like, yeah, man, look, like I don't know the autonomous driving space really, but like it sounds like you're telling me this. What I'm seeing in the results is this. Maybe we try some of these other things. And that's sort of, I think, so yeah.
Nice. No, I get you. It's really interesting, this whole validation work that you guys do. I mean, it's something that every business needs, at the beginning until they figure out what is the angle to approach or reach out to their cold audience, especially.
Yeah, or even
Um,
it could be new market, right? So I worked for a company once where they had really strong like market penetration in their
mhm,
TAM, but their TAM was really small. And they were like it was too small to get to the 100 million revenue.
mhm,
And so they needed like strategically the company needed to figure out how to take this core thing and go sell it somewhere else, right? And the way I look at it is like whether or not you actually have a product, you can say something to a market, right? Like you can say the words. I worked for a company that didn't have a product yet. That's where the skill set kind of came from. Like I got
mhm,
hired, we had an idea, I had to go do outreach against an idea. And what I learned is that's actually a superpower. It's advantageous, right? Because if you're like, this is exactly what we are, and this is what I'm saying, that's a very like narrow surface area. But you don't even need a thing. You can just go talk to the market. And so if you go figure out like what are the ideas that resonate, and then
mhm.
you solve for like, okay, I know this idea works. So how do I build the thing that someone's gonna go, this is what they think they're hearing.
I
That
get you.
feedback is like more controllable. Why most people come up with an idea they believe works, they build it, they bring it to the market, and a vast majority of those companies fail. And it's like, yeah, no one
Mhm.
asked for this. You never figured out that no one wants this until you invested a bunch in building it.
Nice. When you start working with a company that has like zero outbound, you have to start from scratch. What is that like strategic data in the company that could help you find those insights, at least to begin with the initial messaging hypothesis?
Yeah. So the way that um, I'm a big fan. There's this thing called like simple systems versus complex systems theory, right? And so
Mhm,
simple systems theory, like the way, like it basically is like when you can look at something, like you can observe the thing, you can influence an input, you can see what then happens next, so then you know the outcome. And so you can almost treat it like a math equation, right? Like 1 + 1 = 2, like that's simple.
mhm,
Complex systems is like you can have known inputs. The things that happen in the middle, there's so much going on that you actually can't be so like this did this. So you don't know the mechanism of what's going on in the middle, but you do have outcomes, right?
mhm,
And in complex systems, what you do is it's like you kind of assess your footing, you test things, you do things, knowing you can't know exactly what the outcome is going to be against them, and then you measure the outcomes, and then you run that feedback loop, right? And like that logic process is like how we cure cancer. It's how we like ensure vehicular safety, right? It's how we study like psychology, so it's like this process is like a validated process for taking a bunch of unknown things that could work and zeroing in on them, right? So for marketing, we do it market, segment, persona, angle is like sort of our quick and dirty way of mapping out markets and then like quickly testing things and pulling that back in as a feedback loop. What those categories represent for us is market level is sort of like the filters in Zoom info is the way I put it, right? It's like the average SDR is like I'm reaching out to this market, they hit that filter, maybe a head count, and like that's their target list or whatever.
mhm.
um so, we'll take that first, right? Familiar group. Then we'll go a layer further, segment. And to me, what is how I think of segmentation is there's infinite ways you can divide the market. And if you were to go talk to someone inside of some general market, people don't associate themselves as the average of the place that they participate in. Right? And so if you think of it as like, I'm not the average cold email shop, I have a very specific flavor of how I do cold email. And so it's good. Most people know like make this specific to the market, but then the knee-jerk reaction like their prospect has is like, but I'm not like that. So we're gonna go market segment. So we have this like you're this flavor of this market. Next we go persona, right? This person is the owner of this thing inside of this flavor of this market. And then last is like our argument to them or this angle that we're going to sort of suggest towards them. And so when we're testing things, it's just this idea to this person in this segment of this market and map out a bunch of ideas on the front end and then sort of run it, zero in on what works relatively best. Right. And as you're going, as soon as you run a campaign, even if you just run one thing, you have a relative best, no matter how bad or good it is.
Yeah,
And we just basically like try to beat the average and then have this conversation of do you believe that there's better going into the future, or is this as good as it's ever going to be, basically?
understood. Okay. Yeah, no, I want to double click on your methodology for, I mean, what is your methodology? For example, many times, even us or anyone running outbound campaigns have many questions about how many variants we should be testing on an email one, on an email two. What is the variable that we want to run under this testing? Because you can't be running out of the parameters and variables of an email. So what would be your approach for that specific goal?
Yeah. So the way I think of like I'm a big fan of like Occam, the concept of Occam's razor. I think is really important for like cold email people, which is like things tend to like the most likely thing to happen, so to speak, tends to be what happens. Said otherwise for cold email, it's kind of like I believe like the thing that makes someone respond to an email is like they get a message, they look at it, and then these words say something that like they care about, right? And so you'll have people that are split testing things, right? Like a token of a word or like these little minuscule things. And I just reject the idea that like there's a lot of micro optimizations I just don't think matter, basically, right? Because if you go market segment, persona, angle, let's say that you load 500 to 1,000 people per test, and it's like a 1 to 3 step email sequence, right? So in revenue plays, we're looking for like revenue growth, right? Like like tiny incrementality in like B2B doesn't matter. No one, if you have 3 meetings for a month and they're like, this isn't enough, and you're like, oh, we got 4, you're fired, right? Like no one cares, that's not how it works. And so I think that you have changes you make that are like fundamental to how you're speaking to the market. And then you have like optimizations, right? And so for me, the fundamental stuff is like, again, market segment, persona, angle. Angle would just be this like idea of an argument. I would not suggest having like 5 micro variants of one argument up front. I would have 5 broad arguments basically. Because you want to, like, if you're thinking of we're trying to go from everything and filter down quickly, and so if you have a bunch of really near things, you're going to like micro refine, but you won't know the relativity of that. So I'd kind of be like, cost savings versus like speed to value versus de-risking versus this. And then you run those and the results you get aren't going to be like the best results that this idea could get, but you just have this like relativity. And what I've seen is like you run these 5 very different things and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like they definitely don't care about, the revenue upside. They are definitely more responsive when we're talking about like the risk of XYZ, right? And so then as you see that, you go from like you're like, okay, cool. I now see like the market attitude seems to be telling me that like risk is the thing in this that they are responding to. Then I'll start pulling on that thread, right? Now I might start to like micro test against like risk. But what I'm not going to do is start from like, all right, we have these 5 variants. This one has this subject line. This one uses like this signature phrase. That's not it. Because again, you have never looked at a message from a friend in a text or any of this stuff and been like, this is great, dude, but like you use the wrong word. And so I'm not going to respond to this. It's like no one's doing that. They're ignoring it because they don't care.
Get you, I get you. What about this new approach of like stop asking for meetings and like only focus on delivering lead magnets or like upfront value? How much do you believe on that, or how much do you use that concept in your
Yeah.
company?
I don't use it a ton. I don't use it a ton. I think it's fine. The way I look at that, there's a few things in that, right? So one is like, so the reason that exists, right? Why does that exist? Is that serves kind of like the cold email community, right? I think more than like the B2B brands. And what I mean by that is like it's very noisy, and the reason it's noisy is cold email shops that are running that, like it looks good for you to be like, I had a bunch of this interest and we had a bunch of people jump on this and there's all these positive replies and stuff. But just like everyone knows, and it's not for, when it works well, what happens is 100 people take your asset, 10 of those people take the meeting, 2 become customers, right? And if like that ACV chain works, beautiful. Most of those things are like transactional assets that someone's going to take. It has nothing to do with commercialization. And again, in my framework, market segment, persona, angle, the angle is like, can I give you this free thing and will you engage with me basically, which is really far from like competitive positioning. Like I'm trying to win your business. Right. And so it's like at some point in this chain, you're going to have to go from like dancing around the stupid lead magnet to like I'm trying to sell you something. And I think, yeah, like I totally agree. To me, again, there's some people that run that play really well, right? I've seen versions of it. They're like very beautiful. It's a style of like how people do go-to-market stuff. That's not what I like the most because for me, my belief is that there's words, there's ideas themselves, market segment, persona, angle, where if I say these ideas to these people in this segment of this market, they'll be agreeable to it, right? And if that when you have that, that is incredibly strong, right? Like it's not fragile to the lead magnet, it's not fragile to being on LinkedIn, it's not like it's like this idea is resonant with the market. That's extremely valuable. Um, Another thing you'd asked about was like uh God, how I just want to bring this up because we were talking about like the val. Oh, okay. Send a bunch of messages, like find who has like existent demand, right? This graph is, or like this image is something I share with people. This is in market demand, right? So 3% of the market is like buying now, which means they're like in deal cycles with someone. 7% of your market is like open to buying, right? And this isn't your product. This is sort of like your category solution set, let's say. So 10% of the market is sort of like currently thinking about and open to engaging with, let's say, like cold email services, right? And so there's some strategies that are like, how do you maximize volume and like throughput and speed, like maybe hit your TAM every other month or something like that. And what you're doing is you're maximizing the amount of these people that you're going to hit at a time, and you're getting like this kind of easy throughput against that, which is in, I call it easy. Like, again, any revenue play that produces like ROI is a great play. So there's a lot of people who have more opinion about like the aesthetic of the revenue plays than the success of them. I'm more like, proofs in the pudding. So you can compete for the top 10% of the market. Everyone competes for this slice of the market, and you're closer to a commodity here, which means like you're going to get beat up on price more. It's just not the best place to be. So our framework is focused on unlocking this, right? This whole slice. This creates your like addressable market, like your actual, reachable market by 4 times, right? 400% the size of the first population. And it's because we can talk to people who are not thinking about it, right? And if you think about what would take someone who's like not thinking about cold email and get them to say yes to a cold email meeting, it's not cold email stuff, right? It's not me saying, this is what I do, this is how I can help you, here's the offer, right? Here, that's not it. They don't care. Instead, it's basically asking questions about their situation to get them to think, oh, should I be thinking differently? Right. And so maybe I look at people going, hey, I'm looking for people who seem to run like really high ROI paid ad funnels. Like I was looking at your Google Analytics, and I bet you guys throw as much money as you can into that sucker right now because it's flying. Question, do you believe there's a world where the success factor of Google will ever go down? Asking because some people complement those funnels with things like cold email and get started before it's whatever. Like that's way too long. But the idea is like, if you segment everything out, you can start to have these sort of ideas of like what would be something that I could sort of suggest to these people that get someone open to talk to us, right? And so for us, the way I see it is like anything you say related to cold email, these people are going to be relatively responsive. So I literally do not tailor messages to them at all. All I'm thinking about is like, who are these people and what is like this really intelligent sort of, creative, insightful, strategic line of questioning and stuff that I could suggest to this person that takes them, they're like, I'm not thinking about it. And now they're like, oh shoot, I am thinking about it. And then they're like, oh, yep, I'm open to buying. Because when you do that, it's like proprietary demand, as I call it, because they're not talking to everyone else. They're only talking to you, right? And if I go talk to someone and like set the tone of the deal cycle, it's gonna be really hard for some random like average cold email shop to win that deal. Whereas if you have like a transactional buyer who comes inbound to me, it's actually harder to differentiate a little bit. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Also, I remember, Enzo Carazo. I interviewed him a few months back, and he brought this idea of identifying insights like aha moments or like very specific pains out of the sales calls transcripts of your client. So I think that that's like a gold mine, getting the transcripts from your client to identify or where to begin with, because many times your client would tell you, some what he thinks that it is his ICP or what he thinks it is their pain, but actually on those recordings you have the real deal, right?
Well, and like the language matters too. You know what I'm saying? Like the
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 exact
literal
the exact
words.
words. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
what people screw up. Is like because you again, founders have a perspective, which is good. You build a company, like your company is kind of like your opinion of like how to do something. But the important, I always tell people like the market exists whether or not we do, right? Like you go sit with the founder, it's just like, hey, it's kind of like Ghost of Christmas Past. What's that? That whatever movie story. But it's like, you take the person, you're like, pretend your company doesn't exist. Look at this market. Like it's observable. They have, norms and cultures and language and like media that they like, things they care about. And what happens is you could accurately observe something, right? Like let's say that I like martial arts, right? It's like it's true that I like, sport fighting, we'll call it. Someone could say, Kellen, I saw that you're like a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu fan, and it would like irk me, right? Because like and like it's like literally technically true, right? I do no-gi jiu-jitsu, so like Gracie jiu-jitsu would be associated as like really traditional. And like someone could say this and they don't know, like I'm giving all this like super specificity because I'm in group to this. But it's why we need to be like really aware that to us, we might like scan this onboarding doc and they're like, they said this, da, da, da. And then we go start saying that. And it's like, look, you gotta be careful taking things face value because I call it landmines, right? One little word said wrong is all you need to like blow something up, totally trip it up. Everything else could be good.
Right, I'm muting myself. um, can you tell us some case study or like some I don't know client case that you'd like to highlight on this session? Some I don't know some
Yeah.
case where you can demonstrate the impact of running these methodologies. Would be
Yes.
awesome.
And the way I'll talk about it is like, so think of it as like it's an adaptive system for survival, right? Right. Continuity of the deal. And so the point is like, because the what happens oftentimes is I use these beautiful words to talk about things, and then people are like, dude, like what's the sauce? And the important thing is like the sauce is what works. This is how to find what works. Right. And so well, we have a client that we've contributed like 85% of their clients. They have like, I don't know, they probably have like 70 customers and we've gotten 60 some of them or something like that, just like a lot. And when he first signed up with us, we mapped out like a ton of stuff and we did tons of split testing in the first month. And like we got like almost no results. It was like I was like, oh my God, we're gonna turn this guy. This sucks, right? The next month, I was like, I'm gonna make this like literally my thought was like, I'm gonna make this stupider. Like I was like, I was like, I think I went too far. And so I like pulled it back into like simpler and it just prints and it's just printed and printed and printed and printed, right? And so that's an example of like it complexity isn't what wins, right? What wins is what wins. And this is like a iterative process for testing and validating what wins. And if my opinion as a guy who likes making cool, custom, complex things is like I'm gonna
Yeah,
force
the overkill.
yeah, well, and it's just like to me, that's not a nice thing. Client services is like it's not about me and the deal lab, right? It's about like the client. The client has a mission and there's a market they're trying to reach, and every single action should map to like them, not to me. So that's one
The
a
other
cool
point,
one. Oh
sorry,
yeah.
no,
Oh
I
yeah.
was gonna ask you, you say what wins is what wins, but does a copy or like a playbook gets fatigued? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, do you think that it gets fatigued and you have to keep
100%. Yeah. I mean, look,
testing?
that's take like weightlifting, right? So if someone goes to the gym and they like go bench press and they do 3 sets of 8 bench press, they're gonna and they do that like 2 times a week, they're gonna get stronger linearly for a little bit, right? Like every week they're gonna add a little bit, add a little bit, add a little bit. Then they're gonna hit a point where they're not gonna get better, and there's gonna start to be a little bit randomness of better. So one week they'll be better, right? Oh my God, this is our top sales month. The next month low. Oh man, this sucks, right? Because they're doing the same input, but they need a new stimulus to keep going, right? Eventually you keep doing that, you're actually going to get worse because what happens is the adaptation becomes like instead of your body going, there's this new stimulus, I need to get better. It's like the stimulus is the same, so I need to utilize less of me in order to hit that. And you get these atrophying impact, right? Sales stuff, the same thing. And it's why like people, honestly, you even said at the beginning of this, you're like, okay, so you use message market fit to get this, and then there is no and then. You should do this forever. There is no work, you tell me when in your company's history do you want to commit to not trying to improve the throughput of your messaging? You know what I mean? Like I haven't met that founder yet. So people treat this very transactionally. And again, it's part of why it sucks. Because what I tell people is like whatever we get to right now, I guarantee you 3 months from now we'll be able to make it better. Like almost every single time. And so it's just this like continuation of the story. It's a continuation of sort of like this relationship with the market, right? Like there's external things that are changing constantly, right? And so, um, it's like we like to sort of orient like I'm the center of the universe, pause everything else, let me assess things, and now I'm gonna like run my master plan. It's not like that. The world's happening around us rapidly, and we're just like trying to punch in and punch out for like these little things.
All
Yeah.
right, love the take. I don't know what you were going to say before I interrupted you.
Oh,
Um,
well, yeah, I mean, like, I have like a cool, just an example of like a cool message market fit thing, right? Is we had a client that was like enterprise IT services for healthcare companies, right? So we're reaching out to CISOs, CIOs, some other, VP technology people, chief medical officers in these healthcare businesses. And so we did like our message market fit testing. We were doing like 13 tests at a time. We went like for 3 months and we were doing like pure cold outbound messaging, right? You know how I was saying like we don't normally mess with like lead magnets and stuff like that. We were trying to do like pure messaging and it wasn't working. And so then we shifted the thinking to like, okay, like instead of like be purists, can we make this work? Let's shift to like if our life depended on it, like what would we do to try to force this, right? And we don't like to start there because it's much more transactional. And so the idea I came up with was like, so I was thinking, okay, there's this market. What is the thing that this market like has momentum behind already? Instead of me trying to like cold start them, what is something that they're already participating in that they're excited about? That it would just be like this nothing burger nudge to say, hey, should we, whatever, right? So the idea I came up with was like subscribing to RSS feeds of podcasts that interview IT leaders in healthcare, right? So I found like 10 different podcast sites that do, like once a week to a few a month or whatever, like podcasts. There's one called healthsystemcio.com, like that literally, healthsystemcio.com probably maybe like 30 grand or something, like that one stream alone. But because what we'd do is we'd subscribe to this RSS thing, and so it would push out, and you get like the URL, you get the summary, all this stuff. And so we found ones that interviewed these people. We'd scrape like the transcript of it, and all the copy would say, and then we would automate this message. So the podcast comes out, this message would come out like 10 minutes later. You know what I mean? So the timing of it was awesome. It was automated. And it would like look at what the interview was about. And it would basically be like, hey, Marcos, I saw your interview with Kellen talking about message market fit, right? So the first sentence would be, I saw your interview with blank talking about blank. And it goes to the guy that just did this interview. Then it would say, I liked the point you brought up about X, right? Straight from the transcript. And I'd say if I had some questions about why, if I were to call you next week for 15 minutes, would you be open to answering the call? That's it. Right. And yes, 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 yes. And so we went from sending like thousands and thousands. Like, I think so the stat was like we more than doubled the pipeline created against another vendor that existed. They had sent 30,000 messages and produced like two meetings. We sent like 167 and had eight. It was just like astronomical, so the throughput was kind
Wow.
of slow, but it's just an
That's,
example of like message market fit, right? Like these guys are taking their
yeah,
time doing these interviews. Someone reaches out to me right after this and references this. It's kind of like I already put so much energy into doing this. Why wouldn't I be willing to a little bit engage on the back end? And it just worked like crazy well. It was fun
awesome.
because we believed it would, and then it worked even better than it thought, and it was just like sick.
Awesome. Using all of the automation possible for real-time engagements.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
and saying that it works, it's the best feeling, right?
yeah. Amen.
Let's speak about AI. I mean, the use of AI for copywriting. You just mentioned use case just now, but when do you recommend using it? How much control you have over the quality of the copy? What type of providers do you guys normally use? Just open conversation about AI copy, which is a new thing, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we started the business, like we didn't do any AI copy type stuff, right? Like if you go market segment persona angle, if you do it good, you don't need AI copy. You just don't because you can have very, very, imagine you take like Series A startups, PLG, head of growth, and your angle's like selling clay services or something, right? And like being able to be like, hey name, with PLG signups, finding signal from the noise, blah blah. Like it's just easy to like get so specific. It's kind of like the average SDR who goes, "Hey, you reach out to growth people in Series A." Like the message is way more specific, way better than what that person gets doing a one-to-one. You just pattern matched it against 300 people that it fits for or something, right? And so to me, like market segment persona angle is not requisite of like tokenized anything. Now, there are some angles you can only say, like, I'm a big fan of like the words are the things that matter, right? If you're sending an email, the surface of interpretation is the words. Someone looks at the words. They don't look at the list. They don't look at the enrichments. None of that matters to them. And so we've done some campaigns where you're doing like comparisons. We did one where it's like operating partners and private equity portfolios and then like portcos. And we'd reach out to like the founder, like the CEO of the portco plus this operating partner and we would like reference them on the call to each other or on the email to each other. And so in order to do that, you like have to do this data scraping and this merge to have these fields, right? And the idea there is we're going like, oh, is there like this social pressure to both of these people that will drive responsiveness? The answer is yes, mostly. But and so I don't default like it has to be AI to test the thing. I deify like what is the idea I want to test, and then I want to like run a kind of fast and dirty version of it, which is again why it's nice not to do crazy AI lines necessarily up front if you don't have to. And then once you have some throughput, if you kind of go like, oh, this is the idea that works, I need to actualize this, then I'll do everything. It's kind of like whatever. But usually, because what I see is sometimes people spend way too long doing like this little micro stuff to like really smooth out like an AI line. And it's like, yes, this is a better email, but you could have known. But if it fails, who cares? Like a better email that doesn't
Yeah,
work is, and if it take
you
you
can
10 times as
start
long,
you can
yeah,
start validating the email template, the variants, and then add the AI layer for personalization as a improvement. I would say, adding a PS is
yeah.
always good, but it has a challenge of automating the research on each prospect to make a relevant, personalized
It's
line.
also if you do like part of the way I think of it is if you don't do a bunch of things that don't so it's like some things change the angle, like the idea you're sharing. Some things just increase palatability, right? There's a bunch of things you can do to increase the palatability, but there's an argument that that sort of like dilutes the signal. Because if you're doing every single thing to make this easier, and then someone says yes, it's not like it's actually really good when it's not perfect and they say yes. Like if you have like a not super personalized, not super fancy email and someone says yes to it, that's the highest signal, basically. You know what I mean? It's like that's like market fit, like a cup of ice water when you're thirsty does not need market fit. There's no message market fit. It's like that is, it's there.
I get you. And what type of providers you guys use for the personalizing copy with AI?
Yeah, I'm like a big GPT guy personally. Like we use Anthropic, like I like Perplexity for some stuff too. I use like their comment browser right now. My friend works there. Hook me up. But I like GPT. Like I'm a big fan of 4.0 Mini specifically. Like to me it's the best model because I try to use LMs for very narrow tasks, right? And so I think again it's like an
Yeah,
advantage to like not
we
use
are
the
we are big fans also. Like, yeah,
yeah. So it's just
micro tasks exactly.
yeah. Yeah. So to me, it's just like it's basically like if I can't make it happen with 4.0 mini, then I assume that the prompt is bad or the task I'm asking it to do inherently is not as doable as I felt like it was initially. I kind of treat it as like the capacity of what 4.0 mini can do as like as somewhat of like a hard bound to what I should do with Clayton. Some examples of otherwise, right? But a lot of times not. Yeah. This was on Clay, Sarah. It was cool.
We got to 40 minutes of this meeting, so right now we can open the chat for questions. Let's see if we have any questions so far. Let's see. I'm scrolling right now. Um, Here we have a question from Sarah Downing. What size audience do you test before actually finding message market fit?
Yeah. So I don't think a message market fit is like a static thing per se, so much as like it's this concept of alignment, right? And so to me, like day one, if you've run no messaging, you're in like phase, day zero, right? Phase zero is like you have ideas. You immediately graduate from that as soon as you have any numbers. It could be terrible. It could be I sent a million messages and I got zero replies. You're in phase two because you're beyond nothing, right? Uh, then it's sort of like it just depends. And why I say that is like I've had clients with really small TAM, if you have like a 300 person TAM, you're not running tests of 300, right? If you have like infinite TAM, so to speak, like you might think about testing differently. And then to me the equation is like you have your message market fit like throughput multiplied by volume of people multiplied by time, or I guess volume of like touches multiplied by time equals results. Right. And so, like, you can always use improving message market fit to decrease the send volume or to shorten time to get the same outcome, right? And so it's like an independent thing that I think should always generally be thought about. I don't like to scale against like this sort of throughput quotient unless, I don't know. I mean, like people use things like a positive per 300 people enrolled, like that's a decent one. A positive per thousand sends can be like a decent one and can mean similar. Every market's different. I've had clients that like if they get 2 meetings in a month consistently, they're gonna be super happy because of their ACV. I've had clients, we had a client that we hit their quarterly goal 3 months in a row. So they had like a 3 month, quarter goal, and we hit the quarter goal month one, then we hit it again month two, then month three, and they turned because they felt like it was too easy then, right? Which might, and so I,
Been
yeah,
there.
yeah, it depends. Sarah, if there's a follow-up though, like if that's too dodgy, let me know and I can give you more specifics.
Thank you. Leo Protz from Mexico, he's asking, do you previously calculate the percentage of market that's not thinking about buying or just deploy campaign with that intention?
Yeah, I just deploy it. That is a Chet Holmes thing. Chet Holmes, I call it the Chet Holmes pyramid. But like no, because I'm not like I'm not trying to game that. It's more like that's just like a factual truth. It's like my assumption is that in the market, 3% are literally buying it, 7% are like trying to, 30% aren't thinking about it, 30% have like a slight negative attitude, the next 30% like knowingly have a negative attitude. And so um instead of trying to like and there might be times that like if there's something I could do to go, oh, is there, better signal to like segment down further to have like a stronger message, I'll do that. But it's not I never am going like, oh, I need to test 10% of the market or something like that.
All
Um,
right, we have a few more. Alvaro Bruno Salna is asking, when testing message market fit, will you variate angles for each segment, or you will also test the same angle for multiple segments?
Yeah, it could be like either or both. The way like I think of it sequentially, so I go like if you think of what are those called? Like it's like I'd have like the market and then I'd be like, all right, what are segments? I'd have these like offshoots, right? Maybe there's 3 segments. And then and also like segments aren't even mutually exclusive, right? So it's like it's very calm, okay, so saw it I'm gonna do. Saw it on my team said show you guys the whiteboard. So I'll show you guys like a analogy I use internally a lot, right? Like the work we do, I think of like building campaigns as this, right? When I tell people this is super messy, I don't know what this means, but I trust it, right? I know that there's expertise in this and there's like knowledge and information and like power behind this, right? And so I think making campaigns can be like this, where it's like if when I'm talking, it's like it feels like this, it's like good. That is what it is, kind of. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah, like there is not a like a fixed playbook
no,
for all the
exactly.
campaigns. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so and we it's like we want to be fluid, right? Because it's kind of like we want to like we have this impulse of a belief. We're going to test it. We're going to get an outcome. No matter what the outcome is, it's good because it's either going to like affirm our belief or it's going to help us go like, nope, you were wrong, and we're going to refigure it back. And so we will so it's sort of like we just tie things to where they belong, so it's like this angle might fit for 3 personas, it also might only fit for one persona, right? A campaign could be like this angle to all these personas because we're not actually specifying the persona because it works for all of them and we're just seeing like in general does this idea have any amount of resonance, or we might be like 5 different personas, 5 different ideas because we believe there's like very specific unique argument to all of them, right? Sometimes they'll have like 3 personas and we'll take like or yeah, if we had like 3 personas, we might run 2 campaigns. It's like all personas, 2 ideas, and then we might have 3 campaigns that's one persona each, one other specific idea for that persona, right? Because there's sort of this idea people often think of like just positive replies. I think of like elasticity. Like, what do I do that changes things? Any direction of change helps me understand the market better and starts to sort of like tighten up how I interact with people. And that's basically just comes from like rapidly doing things and messing with stuff. So it's like again, like there's not like a rule set that I'm running that's like these angles go to this or these go to this. It's kind of like concussive blast of lots of potential ideas, grab onto the ones that immediately feel super high value to run. And I find that, 10 days into running your first five things, everything historical is going to look real dumb. And we're going to have all sorts of cool new next ideas of what to do.
That's very aligned with the next question, the last question for today. Aman is asking how frequently do you change your angle after determining your market segment persona, and for what reasons?
Yeah. So the first thing, I mean, so like the way I look at it is like the first thing I'm chasing is just blanket resonance, right? And so again, that's relative. Sometimes you get a client where like bad messaging is gonna have, you might have a client that like you load 3,000 people and you're gonna get five meetings no matter how bad the messaging is, right? And then you might have someone else that like you have to work really, 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 really hard just to get one, right? And so it really depends. None of our process is like all the process isn't the goal. The goal is success for the client. And we're always reading what we're seeing and thinking about what we're seeing and considering should we be thinking about it differently than what we thought, before these results started happening. The cadence that we tend to operate on is like basically biweekly sprints is sort of like our default uh, pace. And so it might be like if we were going to do a pilot together, someone would sign up, we spend a month like mapping out all the markets and, segmenting everything, coming up with a bunch of sort of like high level ideas. Then we would build our initial campaigns so that like day one of month two, we're launching these. Excuse me. And what would happen is if we launch on like the 1st of September, we have an internal, let's say we launch on the 1st of September. It's a three-step sequence every other day. So it's going to take 6 working days, right? Which means it's going to go over the weekend. So it's going to take 8 days, right? For the first cohort to go through. So what we'll do is we launch 10 days later, internal task, look at the results, because 4 days later, we're going to have a meeting with our client, right? And so what we do in that gap is we look at what happened, right? We thought something was going to work. It's been running. We have results. We come up with what we believe this means and what we should do next. So when we sit down with the client, it either has been going well and we're like, here's what this means and here's what we can do next and scale it basically, or it's kind of worked and we're like, hey, this is like kind of good. We learned some stuff. Like, let's iterate against it in this way, or it went terribly and it's like, wow, we thought that was going to be really good and this was like awful, so it's good that we can not do that again. Here's what I think we just learned. And either way, we're just going into like what are the next things to launch, right? Very much so not precious to what we have launched, always looking forward to like what is the next thing that we can do.
Nice. Great. I have my last question. I was keeping it. I wanted to ask you about an email sequence. Like you're saying you're using 3 emails for a sequence. Would you try to hit the same goal, like despite that you're using different angles? Like, would you be willing to achieve the same goal, or would craft a sequence with different goals per email? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
usually what I do is the sequence itself. Like Justin Michael talks about like the JMM spear, right? And this is very like JMM spear influenced, where it's like the sequence. So we usually will do either 4-step, 3-step, or 2-step sequences. Email one, no matter the type of sequence, is always the same type of email. I call them either Occam's razor emails or first or just first email. Full story emails is another way I'd call it, which is like email one should tell the whole story of what my angle is. Like it should independently on its own say the entirety of things. It's my best way of saying the angle, I think. Email two, if I do a 2-step sequence, email two is like like what I'll do is like I'll ask if someone else owns it basically. So I'll be like, hey Marcos, does someone else own like X idea? Asking because, and then I'll like soft pitch, right? Like asking because we've worked with other teams too, blah blah blah. And I'll say, something like, would be great to hear back either way, right? So that's always going to be usually the last email in a sequence. If we do a 3 steps, so if we do 2 steps, it's just one day off, every other day. If we do three in the middle of that, I'll put like what I call like an agitational question bump, right? And so it'll just be like a very direct, like semi-abrasive question that someone sees in their inbox and is like, what the hell? And what are they going to do? They're going to scroll up. And if your first email was the best way that you could phrase an idea, I don't want to say it again worse the second time. I just want to give it second legs. And most emails weren't read and ignored. They were never read. Or if they were read, they were like not really comprehended. So I'm just trying to like get someone to literally go like, what the hell is this? And then go read the thing because then they're interested to read the thing because they're wondering what the hell is this agitational bump, right? So if it's a 3-step, it's every other day and it's like full story, agitational bump, does someone else own this, right? If we do 4
Love
steps,
it. That's
it,
a secret sauce that
oh
everybody
yeah, it's fine.
came to get.
Yeah, it's good. It totally works. It's good stuff. It's funny because clients get very, it stresses clients out, because I mean it when I say agitational. You don't want to be like a jerk. Like it can't be that. They
Of
can't
course,
dislike you, but you do want to have a little bit of this
the
like to me, you want to be like, what the hell?
poke the bear
Yeah.
question, or like, yeah, thought
Exactly.
thought
Um,
provoking.
And so if you do 4-step sequence, what I do is a full story. If I do 4-step, it's so I can test 2 distinct ideas. And what I'll do is I'll do 2 threads of 2. First email will be like full story email A, and then I'll do agitational bump, and then I'll do a new thread, full story B, and then I'll do the same, does someone else own XYZ? And so I'll do 4 steps if I need to test 2 first emails. But I honestly haven't been doing that as much lately because it's just usually 2 or 3 emails make sense, because it's also like if you're doing 4, you're taking away from net new enrollments, right? So usually I'd rather do like twice the enrollments, 2-step emails, but it's market dependent.
Keep, I would say, decreasing the amount of steps.
Yeah, I know.
When we started with outbound, we were like 7 or
Oh,
6.
I know. Bro, I used to do like 16. Yeah. Actually, though, I will say,
Keep
like, I'm
following up.
bringing
Keep
that back.
following up.
I got a client right now that we did like we built, they have like an SDR team and sales team. So we're doing like 19, we've been doing like 19-step sequences and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, brings me back.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining today, for
Hey, can
tuning
I real
in.
quick? Someone has like, let me try to hit this question. It's
We
a
have
long one.
some last questions. Yeah, Anthony and Matej sort of, the last two, and then
Okay.
we're
Okay.
done.
So, okay. KPIs on message market fit. I would just use like, I would use positive reply rate per 1,000 enrolled or something like that. And like, an acceptable rate there can be a bunch of different things because it just depends on the client. So scenario, small TAM, 2,000 leads. They all fit firmographic. They've never done successful outbound. Um, Run through the list. I achieve some results, learn a lot. Then what? Yeah. Okay. That's super hard. Yeah, like you do need to retarget it. What I would do, man. Oh, if that was gonna be PRL for the win, that's also funny. That might have been, but maybe it's just PR. Let's see. Yeah, so what I would do, so I would look for additional leads. I would do yes and. So, oh, sorry, positive reply rate. Okay, I thought you're like PRLs is like a phone thing, phone validation. Um, so basically, I would look for more leads if you can find them because that's gonna be really useful. I would just have a conversation with the client that their market is not very good for like a fractional single channel service. And I would be like, dude, amazing job. Like, if you ran that and you got results, that is a huge win. That is so valuable because if they now know they have a thing that they can do, it de-risks their hiring, right? So instead of selling that as just like the ROI of like the opportunity generated, I would look at it as like they have an asset now that they're going to be able to use for a long time. And I would try to shift that and like they should hire someone, and you should do market segmentation, you should do data, you should do messaging strategy, but you should have someone doing like multi-step and doing LinkedIn and calling and all that sort of stuff if you want to get the most results out of it. I think those are really hard to retain otherwise. You could also do all that stuff, but I would recommend they get a rep.
Thanks, Kellen, for taking all the questions. Last, let the audience know how they can get in touch with you and work with the Deal Lab. That'll
Yes.
be like the last uh, task for the day.
Yeah. I have a new cool one. So gtmcafe.com is my Slack community. It's a free community. There's like over 1,000 now, like Clay, GTM engineer, operator type people in there, and so we have gtmcafe.com. It's gtmcafe.com. Super easy. Yeah. Thank you, Saad.
The
Actually, no. So, anyways,
probably the most active community in
yeah,
the
yeah,
GTM
it's crazy good.
space.
Yeah, it's crazy good. It's
It's
like it's
very active.
and all my competitors are in there. We all help each other. We're in collusion to make the world succeed. It's too good. So that's a good space. LinkedIn's a good space. Thedeallab.com if you want to see a little bit of what we do, although our website's pretty basic. And then anyone who has questions, hit me up. Hit me up on Slack, hit me up on LinkedIn. Like I love connecting with people. I love being able to be supportive. Yeah. So dude, thank you. This is super fun.
So, all right. Yeah, we're on time. So thank you for tuning in today. And we'll see you next week, or
Yeah,
probably, yeah, next week.
yeah, we'll be around. Thank you. Thank you,
Have a,
everybody. See you
have a good
guys.
one.